afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the session. Back in the studio once again, and this time with Concord's newest brewery. Sidegate Brewery and Beer Garden is with me today. I've got Kevin Wilson and Paul Culbertson. Welcome, guys. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here.
Yeah,
thanks for having us.
This is awesome.
It's I'm excited to have you guys in here. You've been open for how long now?
We're getting close to 8 months.
Okay.
Actually.
Yeah. Early September last year is when we opened, so It's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's an exciting time to be an open brewery now that now that it's 2022, and we're past the lockdown stages. So I'm glad you guys made it through all that and are here. I've got your beer in my glass, and we've got a lot to do today. We're going to try some cool stuff. We're going to talk about cold IPA, which I don't think we've done on this show ever before. So I'm excited about that. I want to thank our sponsor today, More Beer. They brought you this show, and they bring you every session that we do. You can go to morebeer.com and check them out. I recommend checking out the Komos line of equipment that they have. I just got a Komos kegerator from them, and it's changed my life. Fits in my RV. It's amazing. Go to morebeer.com. Thank them for supporting this show. Okay, and ways to support the show. I know that everybody always asks, so I just get that out of the way quickly. You can still donate via PayPal. Just hit the donate buttons on our webpage. There's a whole page for donating. We always need the support, especially nowadays. So the shows are free to you, and donating is just a great way to help us out. You can also, if you don't want to do that, you can click the Amazon links on our homepage and do your Amazon shopping. All the shopping, you don't have to buy any special items. You can just buy whatever you normally do. But if you start at our link, then it helps us out a whole bunch. And then the other thing you could do is support our sponsors, like More Beer, the 21st Amendment, Beersmith, Williams Brewing Company. You've heard all of them on here before. And if you support them and let them know you heard them on the show, then that helps us a bunch too. Okay, and then some quick announcements. I need to let you know about the Livermore Valley Craft Beer Festival. It's coming up on May 7th. So not this coming weekend, but next weekend. It's a great event. They, of course, had their own 2-year virus-induced hiatus, but they're back now for the 6th annual Livermore Valley Craft Beer Festival. It's Saturday, May 7th from 1 to 5. You and 1,500 of your closest friends soaking up the springtime sun, sampling Northern California's best beers, and supporting a great cause. Proceeds go to get kids to and from Livermore's nearest Shriners hospitals for children. So it's really, you're drinking for an amazing cause. As in years past, it's at the Shrine Event Center, and we'll have some of the best NorCal breweries for you to explore. Great live music, delicious food. Several local restaurants and caterers will be there. It's all for $50 if you buy ahead of time, and you should buy ahead of time. Otherwise, it's going to be $60 at the door. If you're looking for a next level experience, you can get the VIP ticket for $80. You get in an hour early. You can hang out with the breweries. You can get beer a little faster. Some VIP live music will be there. Plus, you get an event shirt in your size. Which is, you don't always get that, believe it or not. So they really work hard to give you a great experience. Check it all out at livermore.beer. You can get tickets and the latest info over at livermore.beer. All right, excited about that fest. I'm excited about all festivals being back. Did you guys have fun at Spring Brews Festival this year?
It was fantastic.
Good.
I mean, just great to see people coming out, beautiful weather, and just getting back together again, around beer, which is such a good social way to bring people together. And we were a part of it as one of our first big beer festivals we did. So
oh, heck yeah.
It was fantastic, and we just got to roll the cake straight from our brewery
right so close.
over to the park, and it was a fantastic day. Yeah,
I was really happy to have you guys. First time you guys have been there, and yeah,
we were looking forward to it for a long time. Actually, when Paul and when we signed our lease at Sidegate, it was in January of 2020. And the Spring Brews Fest was going to be in March. We're like, man, we don't have any merch yet. We barely have a name. We have a space. So we're just going to hang out outside and just hand out flyers, be like, hey, new brewery coming eventually.
Right.
But then, unfortunately, that didn't happen. But we've been looking forward to it ever since. And it was exactly, I've been as a customer for a long time, just kind of going over there and having a bunch of beers. And it was so much fun to be there as a brewery, too.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it was good to have you. Were you guys busy afterward? Did people come pouring by the patio?
We had a real good crowd.
Good.
We had been warned by about some of the mayhem that might ensue post event. Thankfully, it was actually just a real cool crowd, and just kind of people ready for their kind of evening cap after the event. And we had a good crowd. It was fun to introduce a lot of new people to our brewery. That were here for the event, and on their way back to the BART station.
Exactly.
Or they got to stop by.
A lot of people getting a chance to sit down for the first time in 4 or 5 hours, so that was good.
Yeah, we always get that. And I wanted that for you guys. I wanted you guys to have a big sort of post crowd, and I think it was me that warned you. Like, it could get. Yeah. It's the only day of the year that we hire a security guard at the door, and it's not actually because people are all that rowdy. It's just you don't want to overserve people, right?
Right.
And so our security guard is really kind of there to do that, and then of course people who are at the point of being overserved aren't always like the nicest when they get turned away, right? So that's all I wanted you to be worried about. But we experienced a really much more mellow crowd this year over here too. So
yeah, it was a blast all around.
Oh, that's good. Okay, I want to get right to some beer. I've got a Vienna lager in my glass that you guys brewed. We're also drinking a pale ale in our glass from Russian River, right? But let's talk about your Sidegate Vienna. What's this beer called, first of all?
We call this Copper Miracle.
Okay, yeah.
And I mean, one, you can appreciate the color from this. I'm a big you drink with your eyes first kind of guy. So, getting the color right on a nice, when the sun's shining behind this thing is something I think is one of the coolest aspects of it. But it's just a nice, it's very crushable, and you still got that Vienna malt character to it. So it's one that, we find ourselves kind of introducing our customers to a little bit for the first time. They're not as familiar as, with a Pilsner or some other things like that. So it is cool to educate people a little bit on what a Vienna lager is all about, and we really enjoy drinking it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beer that I think Paul and I go to a lot more than some of our other beers that we have on tap, just personally, that we like to drink, because, A, it's pretty low ABV. This one's at 5.2%, but it's exactly what he described. It's got a lot of flavor without having a lot of, it's not too bitter. It's not it's just not over the top. Everything is very, very balanced on it. And you get a little bit more out of it than you would like an average Pilsner or a Mexican lager or an American light lager. So it's really fun when customers order it, especially in taster sets. We get a lot of people saying I know the 3 beers I want in a 4-beer taster set. What's the 4th beer? And I always am like, well, go for the Vienna lager. If you've never had a beer like that, give it a shot, because it's got a little bit more going on, a little bit more flavor than your average sort of light lager, while still being really easy to drink.
I've always been a fan of it for exactly that description. And it's got enough malt to it, but because it's a lager, it doesn't fall on the sweet side.
Yeah.
Right? I hope nobody minds me saying that Negro Modelo is just this classic, wonderful Vienna lager that has all the balance I'm looking for. And yours does too. It's all crystal clear. I love that copper color. It's definitely not too sweet, but enough sweetness so that it's a Vienna, and I can taste some malt.
Yeah.
That's really kind of the beauty of a Vienna lager, is being able to showcase some malt.
Well, and we did that actually. A lot of what Paul and I do as far as brewing goes is we try to find that traditional style and then either brew it close to that or with a little bit of a twist.
Okay.
And this one was pretty close to a traditional Vienna lager. I mean, it's 50% Vienna malt and 50% Pilsner malt.
Okay.
So there's a hefty amount of Vienna malt in there, but because of the style and because of the Vienna malt's not too aggressive, you get flavor without the too heaviness on the sweet side.
Yeah, it definitely dries out nice too.
Yeah.
Did you go traditional on hops?
Sort of.
Okay.
I'd say we used some German hops. We did some Huell Melon in there, which isn't a super common one for Vienna lagers. And obviously Vienna's in Austria, not Germany, but they use a lot of the same hops.
Oh yeah.
But we did, it's a lot of our lagers are, they'll have some of the noble hop character in it, and then some very neutral hops that we've used in the past. So there's definitely some German Magnum in there.
Nice. That's your bittering edition, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's where we get that little bit of that twist Kevin was talking about, is sometimes maybe playing around with some hops that are a little less traditional to style.
Yeah.
But for something that's low IBUs like this, it's pretty nuanced, right? When you're hopping something like this. So
it's delicious. Popular?
Hey,
I feel like it's one of those beers that the second someone tries it, they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to get another one of these.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get. Sometimes it can be hard to get people to introduce themselves to a new beer style.
Sure.
But it's definitely one that I'm confident. Hey, give it a shot, try it. oh, yeah, this is a lot easier to drink than I thought it was going to be.
Are you a brewery that has like a model of a few core beers that will kind of always be there, like a beer like this, or do you just rotate different beers all the time?
And especially, starting out, we come from that kind of home brewer mentality, both Kevin and I having that background, and, we're very much tap room focused, and we use that tap room mentality to think about, what's that perfect selection that a customer would want when they come in. So for us, rotating new beers through is really important to us, and we're, as far as distribution and having flagships go, that may be in the future someday, but for now, we're really enjoying the flexibility we have to again bring that kind of experimental home brewer mentality to the beers that we do. And a lot of these are styles that we've done a lot of experimenting in the past with, and we're bringing them to the table with new twists. But we like to have a portfolio of a lot of different styles, and just keep mixing different things through, so that when people come in, there's always going to be some new stuff. And also, we don't have kind of our hands tied with, we got to make these 7 flagships, and we can only play with so many others. Right now we're kind of responding to what our customers are into, what we're into, what our staff's into, and it's a lot of fun to be able to kind of do that and sort of fly by the seat of our pants a little bit.
How many taps are you trying to keep full over there?
We've got 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good amount.
Yeah, so 15 of them are beers, 1 hard seltzer, because our liquor license essentially says that, hey, we can brew whatever we want, but we can't serve anything we don't brew.
Okay.
And so we need to have a gluten-free, sugar-free option. So the seltzer's awesome. We've done some fun stuff with that. But 15 beers all the time. And like what Paul was saying, the portfolio is really nice for us because we don't want to lean too heavily into one style. I mean, obviously IPAs are big sellers, like hazies, West Coast IPAs, even some cold IPAs we've got. So that's about a third to half the menu at any given time. But the other half is, a couple different lagers. So we've got a Pilsner and a Vienna lager right now. We've got a wit beer. We just did another wheat beer that we're going to add some blood orange to later this week. Get that on tap in the next couple weeks to replace the wit beer. We had an amber ale for a long time. We have a milk stout, so we always have a dark option. We love to do Belgian beers, so we actually have a Belgian golden ale on tap right now.
Nice.
And we're going to be making a saison later this week. So we love to just make sure that when anyone comes in, there's a beer style for them, even if they don't know it's for them yet, right?
Sure. So this brings me to my next question anyway. That's really like a home brewer, I think, take on things too. Like, really wanted to brew what you want to brew, run the gamut of the styles, because maybe as a home brewer, you were a little bored just brewing pale ales all the time like I did.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to really try to challenge yourself to do all that.
Yeah.
So you guys were home brewers to start, right?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I just grew up with it my whole life. My dad has been homebrewing since the mid-'80s.
Okay.
So, I mean, literally before I could walk, I was helping him, cap beers. Like, I was just pulling the lever on the capper to get those beers ready for him and my uncles probably to go have a good time. But no, I mean, it's been great. I mean, I've started brewing, I've just grown up with it. It was like a weekend hobby for my dad, and, a great thing for him to do. When I was growing up. And then as I got old enough, I was like, wait, this is actually like a really interesting hobby, because it's a lot more involved than doing something else. Like it's a full commitment on any given Saturday or Sunday.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
To brew. And then all the upkeep kind of over time, and what was lucky for me actually is that by the time I did start to homebrew by myself, he had kind of gotten all this equipment over the years that he had just slowly started building up, and better and better and better and better. A lot of it actually being more beer equipment, because we're local to the area. So it was great. I kind of cheated a little bit by having a big head start on home brewing by getting to use a lot better equipment, and then having somebody to teach me. Whereas Paul, I think, is a lot more like self-taught.
Yeah, and actually, if you want to catch Kevin's dad, Greg, he actually is in the tap room every now and then behind the bar pouring beers.
Yeah,
So I
typically
think Sundays.
Sundays.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Greg,
Extending his hobby from brewing to pouring now.
Oh yeah, he's fully retired now, so he has a really good time on Sundays, usually from like noon to 4 when he's behind the bar, just kind of.
Nice.
If you want to talk homebrew, you want to talk beer in general. He knows way more than I do about just like the history of beer and any given obscure beer style that nobody like. He loves Dortmunder exports.
Me too.
They're great beers,
Yeah,
but
I
you don't
just
see a lot
brewed
of breweries making them.
You don't. I just brewed one with Chris Graham, with the guys from More Beer.
Oh, nice.
Because it's one of my favorite styles.
Yeah.
So
So if you ever want to just talk to my dad behind the bar, he'll tell you everything you need to know about
make
it.
his day for sure. Yeah.
well, and you guys got the name Sidegate from kind of the philosophy of your dad brewing, isn't that right?
A little bit of that, yeah. I mean, I know Paul kind of experienced that too, like when he's been homebrewing. But it was one thing that we wanted to really hit home, like as far as the culture goes, is that brewing is like a shareable hobby. It's a shareable thing, even if it's not the hobby. Like it's something that you do to invite friends over, neighbors, anything like that, and it just creates a collective like group of people that just want to hang out.
Yeah.
And so I know when I was growing up, it was always like a fun thing when my dad was like, "Oh, hey, so-and-so neighbor from 3 blocks up the street is interested in coming over and seeing how the beer process works and then how beer is made." And he'd always just say like, "Hey, just come on through the side gate. I'm in the backyard," because we were always brewing in the backyard back then.
Right.
And I'm not going to answer the door. Just come to the side gate. And so
Nice.
it created this very like open environment where you get people coming in and out. We usually have like a barbecue going. I know Paul experienced a lot of the same thing when he was brewing too.
Yeah, I think what I realized is, brewing out of my garage for so long, like that was how I met so many of my neighbors or got to know like my community a little bit. Is I'd be out there brewing and my neighbors would be walking their dog, looking at me funny, like what? There's a lot of stainless steel, and there's some steam, and looks like you're up to no good in there.
Yeah, we're not cooking meth. We're cooking beer.
that was the running joke. Yep. But yeah, I mean, just the sense of community around. To me, the coolest part about making beer, whether it's on a small scale or a larger scale, is sharing it with other people, right? That's the beauty of it. From the time I, brewed my first extract, Sierra Nevada clone, and people were like, "Wow, this actually tastes like beer," and I was like, "Yeah, isn't that crazy? Like maybe I'll stick with this for a while." So,
Right.
Totally cool, and that was. That idea of, taking beers with you wherever you go to, a friend or family member, and then you kind of have something cool to share with them. And also it gets you out of having to buy fancy gifts and stuff. You're like, hey,
That's
here's some homebrew for you, free beer. Like
Exactly. It makes the best
what could
wedding
be better?
gift ever.
Oh,
you don't have to
totally.
go to the registry.
Yes.
You just be like, "Hey, I'll bring a keg." That's all
Everyone's
good.
like, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yep.
So at what point do you guys decide then that you want to go pro? Did you have a before pro career going, each of you, and decided to move on? Kind of talk me through how you decided to go this route.
Yeah, so for me, it was more. So I was in corporate finance before this, and I enjoyed it a lot. I really liked the place I worked. I liked the people I worked with, but I always felt like there was something a little bit missing. It was a great job. I was, happy to do it, but it just wasn't like the perfect job for me or like the right thing to do.
Okay.
So I ended up actually leaving that company and didn't totally know what I wanted to do next. This was back in 2018.
Okay.
Knew that, hey, like if I wanted to come back to that same company and do some corporate finance, they would be happy to have me back. It was really good terms. But I knew that I wanted to do something a little bit different. And so I thought like, okay, at the very least, I've always wanted to open a brewery, start a brewery, work in a brewery, do something related to brewing. And so I decided to start, I was thinking like, hey, I'm going to put together a business plan for this. And Paul and I had actually, we worked together at that previous company.
Mm-hmm.
And so Paul and I had actually made, some beers together before. And I remember I was actually like a month or two after I had quit, I was over at his house. We were, making a beer. I was helping out with something. And he was like, hey, I kind of want to start a brewery too. Like,
wow.
Is this something we want to do together?
Yeah.
So, that's actually like, I mean, it's something I always had in the back of my mind. Clearly, it was definitely something Paul already had
It's
too.
kind of one of those stories. Like I've brewed with a lot of friends, and you talk about oh man, you're sitting in the garage, throwing, the boil's going, you're tossing some hops in there and having a home brew, and you're like, it'd be pretty cool to make a job out of this, wouldn't it? So
Yeah.
it was just one of those things been in the back of both of our minds for a while. And again, we were coworkers. We bonded over beer, shared home brews with each other, brewed some beers together. We did some fundraisers where we were brewing beer to support some good causes. We just one day it was kind of like, let's get serious about this. Let's actually put pen to paper and, pencil this out and think about, markets and financials and beer portfolios and talk to other brewers.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, a lot of, obviously coming from that home brewer background and not a commercial brewing, area, it was a lot of how we kind of figured out how we were going to go about this was by talking to other brewers and, just kind of learning a lot of things from scratch. And so I think one of the big things for us is we'll just keep a really open mind to learning from others. And obviously the community around brewing and breweries is just so awesome in terms of information sharing and helping that kind of rising tide of getting people to appreciate craft beer is good for all of us.
Sure.
And so
was there worry on your part or were there warnings on the part of breweries about did you wonder at all if it's too late to be a new craft brewery? I mean, there's so many opening.
We got a lot. Yeah, we got that question a lot, actually. And it was mainly from folks who didn't, they didn't necessarily know what our business plan was. And really, we're taproom focused. So we don't, we're not looking to be this pure production brewery that just distributes out into the region, because it's really hard to compete by doing that right off the bat. I mean, it's so sales focused. We were like, well, let's build a culture in a tap room, make good beer there, bring people to that tap room, and give them a reason to come to that tap room, even if it's not just the beer.
Sure.
And so that's why actually the side gate sort of name and culture was so important, because we really wanted it to have a little bit of that backyard sort of come on in the side gate, don't knock on the front door.
Yeah.
Everybody's welcome sort of situation.
It's funny that the entrance to you is really a side gate.
We actually have two entrances, and they're both side gates.
Yeah.
which is really lucky, because the name was before the place.
Yeah.
But no, it was the patio actually was a huge draw for us. Mainly because on this side of the Caldecott Tunnel, in this part of the East Bay, there's not a ton of breweries when you look at the number of people who live out here. I mean, you got Berkeley, Oakland, San Francisco that are super saturated, but there's a lot of people there too. And then you go into Lafayette, Orinda, Walnut Creek, Pleasant Hill, Concord, Martinez. There's breweries, but there's not that many. It's not a super saturated area. So when you're hyper focused on an area like that, it becomes a lot easier for people to be like, oh, actually, yeah, there's really not that many breweries around. There's always room for more out here. So it was
what I hear from brewers too that talk about opening a new brewery and give advice, it's that the hyper local tap room model still does and most likely always will work. Mm-hmm. And it's you're not going to become the richest person on earth with the local tap room model, but you're going to make a good living. You can be a community tap room like you guys are doing.
Right, and it allows you to grow a little bit more organically too. If you can create that culture there, a lot of how people pivot off of that single tap room model is they now open a second tap room or a third or a fourth, and they kind of find these little pockets where they can still create that atmosphere that you have in the main brewery, but kind of pivot it off to somewhere else.
Yeah, it's a good point. And although I will just add too, with all the lessons of a pandemic, when Vinny Chilurzo, whose beer we're also drinking at the same time in here, when he was in here, he talked about how, because his sales model was multi-tiered, some over the counter at the tap room, some distributed, and then they even picked up mail, sell by mail. He felt that he was when any one thing goes to shit, he was better poised to handle that, right? So when we experience lockdowns and things like that here, my biggest issue was that I sell everything over the bar, like you guys are doing right now too.
Yeah.
And who could have planned for that? He wasn't saying anyone did poorly because they didn't plan for it. He was just sort of commenting that he was lucky enough that he stuck to kind of a 3-tier system rather than like a one-way street of sales in case any one thing goes wrong. Alternatively, if you were just a distributed brewery and your distributor drops you. Right, like any number. So I just think that while this local taproom model works, everything has its little tricky nuances.
Oh, definitely.
And I think we're definitely keeping an open mind as to what the future is for Sidegate. You know, where we really love what we're doing right now, and the flexibility and how tight we are becoming with the community, and we're really proud of what we've built here. And I think we're optimistic that we can start doing with time, doing some more things with our beer, and we're definitely a transition for us that's pretty imminent is getting more keg distribution out, so getting beers out kind of throughout the county,
sure,
and things like that. And like we're really have an open mind about growing, but growing smart, and we're definitely not in a huge hurry to do it. We're not going to be knocking on Costco's door trying to get
right.
Get in there. But
not yet.
We're really
at some point,
happy.
hopefully.
We're really happy with where we're at. We've got a lot of optimism about the future, and
good.
For now, it's great that we can stay focused on the beers and the tap room, which is what we really want to create. Is just an awesome experience around the ambiance of the beer garden and the tap room and the beers, and then take it from there.
Well, and I want to talk more about the tap room. I'm going to get us to a break first when we come back, because I've got some history in your building that you guys are at also.
Excited to hear it.
But real quick before the break, one more question about your Vienna lager. Do you do like a traditional lager of this beer, or do you guys do that kind of fast lager? Like, how long was this in the tank before you were sending?
So this one was kind of interesting because it was an accidental traditional lagering process. I mean, not about accidental, just that we were kind of oversaturated on beers, and we were actually low on kegs at the time because we're pretty new. And so we've kind of like sporadically bought more kegs over time. We brewed this beer knowing we really wanted to brew it and get it on tap. But it was in the middle of winter, and the sales were a little bit slow, and we were running low on kegs, and we had a couple new IPAs that we had to get out. And so basically every beer we brewed for a little while was like a more important one to get on tap. So this one actually accidentally hung out and lagered in the fermenter for a good like 6-7 weeks. And I mean, it turned out great. So if we replicate it, like, we'll see if we can do it a little faster, or if it really does need that process. But no, actually, a lot of our beers I feel like we definitely don't go traditional like lager sort of.
So you don't have this like standard 6 weeks in the tank.
No. I mean, we'll obviously starting a real low, the low 50s, and let it hang out. But we also want to make sure that there's room to get that temperature rise from the diacetyl rest and that kind of final part of fermentation. So I think our lagers are we're definitely not, again, because we're not hyper production focused. It's not about how quick we can move them on, but I think most of our lagers we're probably still getting about 3 weeks plus in the tanks of fermentation, a little bit of conditioning, and we have a massive cold room, so there's a little bit of conditioning that happens once we get the beer in the kegs. And that was something that was kind of a happy accident or whatever, just having that much space. Our fermentation space is pretty limited, but our cold room is pretty expansive.
It's
so we
very, very large. We
can throw beers in there and let them, at that 38-degree temperature, kind of hang out and get to their happy place. Before we throw them on draft.
So that's the very few. I think I've done 3 in my minute homebrewing career lagers. I found that any sort of cold conditioning like that for a longer time just does make things better. Mm-hmm. And so I would encourage homebrewers who are listening to this, and especially if you want to do a Vienna lager, I mean, if you want to do a shortened fermentation like in that primary tank, by all means, Tasty on the show. There's a bunch of shows in the Brewing Network who will teach you how to do that. But even sitting in the keg in cold storage, lagering in the keg, to me, and you should taste it. You should taste it when you keg it and go like,
Yeah.
all right, make some mental notes, right? And then let it sit for 3 weeks. Don't touch it, right?
Yeah.
And even in the keg, I have been so like astonished at the difference after another several weeks.
That is totally true, and from a homebrewer's perspective, that I mean, I could. There were kegs that I would drink of certain lagers or any other beer that we would make, and I'd be like, man, this beer's been on tap for a month and it is so good right now, and I wish I didn't drink it the last
Right.
3 weeks
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's so much better right now. But that's part of the fun, right? Is that you get to try it at different stages, and you finally figure out this is the peak time to drink this beer.
Right.
And then, it's you make a note, and next time you make it, you either let it sit in the keg or you let it sit in the fermenter for longer, and there you go. Now you have a replicatable process.
100%. And of course, homebrewers have that luxury, not needing to free up a tank and get going. So certainly not criticizing by any means, but for homebrewers, I just really like to say even if you got to get it out of the fermenter, hang on to a keg, just whatever, because it does get better. All right, I'm going to take us to a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about where Sidegate is, which of course is here in Concord, California. They're just 2 blocks from the Hop Grenade, and I've got a little history with that location. I'll tell you when we get back. Hang in there. You're listening to The Session, and we'll be right back.
We saw some holy people walk out, preaching on the lawns and the gardens to the faithful. Some night was playing on a big stage, strumming all the right chords for a good mood. Down in the canyon all through the night, 10,000 lives I've lived singing side by side. Why won't you let me break your heart and see the light of day drifting through the dark? And I know that everything is falling off. Maybe it's better to cope instead of fighting it. Why won't you let me break your heart and see the light of day drifting through the dark? I sipped my hurricane and waited for my thoughts to turn vicious. I kept quite calm and clever, but you got up to dance without me.
Oh man, so much nicer.
Down in the canyon all through the night, 10,000 miles I've lived singing side by side. Why won't you let me break your heart and see the light of day drifting through the dark? And I know that everything is falling off. Maybe it's better to cope instead of fighting it. Why won't you let me break your
welcome back to the program. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Still here with Sidegate Brewery and Beer Garden. I like the distinction. I like that you put the whole thing in the name because you guys, as we're about to talk about, have a rad beer garden. And I wanted to get your take on the building and give a little history on it myself. So you guys chose the I know it because I've been around Concord for so long, and you guys have too, or at least you have, Kevin, right?
Yeah, I mean, Paul's been in Walnut Creek for like 15 years, right? So
So it used to be this amazing dive bar called Time Out, and it was Time Out for a long time, and Time Out was like all sorts of glorious things and seedy things at the same time. But one of the very cool things about it was it had this great like music history. All the local bands, which is how I knew the place in my local bands and with other bands that I managed and all that, we all played at Time Out at one time or another. You know, this is what, like in my 20s, right? So this is a long time ago. And so the place has this like kind of place in my heart. And so I looked at it too before we found our location for the Hop Grenade. Time Out had already left, and I went and looked. And at that time, when it was vacant after Time Out, it was the same or worse disaster that it had been when it was open.
Well, you finally saw it with the lights on.
Right. Saw it with the lights on, and it was. I didn't have the budget to make that place over as much. But what I loved was one of the same things I think you guys love was like the outdoor patio, the beer area. And for me, the fond memories of like buying drugs there and like playing in bands and like, you know, I have lots of awesome memories about that. I was upstairs doing things I shouldn't be doing. And it wasn't even open.
We've heard those stories before,
which I think it's part of Concord history. And I really liked it as a location for us, but just couldn't handle that amount of build out. Well, we found our spot here. And then a place took it over and did a bunch of remodeling, not a full, but then it was like Grant Street Pizza, right?
Yeah,
pizzeria,
yeah, Grant Street Pub and Pizzeria for a little while.
Okay. And so that was there for a couple years. And they cleaned it up real nice. It definitely was not divey anymore. They had done a lot to it. But the thing about the building is that it has this awesome outdoor patio area, its own large parking lot, which I thought would be cool for events. But it also had this upstairs loft area, which even when the pizza place took over, kind of left that like blocked off. So they didn't do a full build. They made it nice and it was great, and I appreciated what they did. But you guys then so they didn't make it, and you guys come in and you did the build I wanted to do. Like, I'm straight up saying that. In fact, you did it better. I wouldn't have. You guys made it so nice in there. And I'm going to let you sort of talk about this, but just to paint the picture for my listeners, like, you guys took this kind of low ceiling, first floor, nice enough area and ripped out that shit above you that was useless anyway to provide a good half of it as this big open like space, so that you have tall ceilings now and exposed beams, but then also used what I really wanted to use the whole time was to keep a loft.
Yeah.
That people can go sit in and look down at the brewery, and like you really did it right. And Kevin, when I met you, even before I went to the brewery, we met at a beer event, and you were showing me pictures, and I said it to you then.
This was at Fieldworks, or not Fieldworks. It was at the Rare Barrel when they were launching their new brand, Hello Friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the pictures, and I think I said it to you right then. I was like, Kevin, that's it.
Yeah.
That's what that place needed. It's such a cool spot, and that somebody finally did that to it. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, it still must have been a massive project. And could you walk me through how you were able to and your plans? And
yeah, I mean, you want the short version, the long version, or the medium version on that one?
The entertaining version.
The short, definitely the short to medium, but maybe not plans A to Z. But I guess when I say that someone partially renovated it, it doesn't mean that you guys didn't have a mountain of work and money to spend. And so I'm just sort of curious, like, here's a new venture for you guys. Yep. You guys don't take me, I don't take you for like trust fund babies. So I feel like you got there, you had this vision, and somehow we're still able to execute it.
And I think a lot of what for one, we like to call it a historical building because it does have a lot of history. You mentioned
Yeah.
the timeout, and that was back in the, maybe going back to the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
But before that, we found parts of this building as we kind of pulled back the layers of the onion that are very likely over 100 years old. So this is like part of the history of Concord, and as the downtown was developing, this was like a block in an area that was part of that. But a lot of what we did, our focus, we drew a lot of inspiration from a lot of places. But with that building, I think one was as we walked through it, and meanwhile there were still like dirty dishes and things left from the prior tenant around.
Yeah,
believe
whole bottles of like ketchup, mustard, like literally
Yeah.
like the whoever left it beforehand
Yeah.
definitely was out very quickly
Was
and took
not-
whatever was valuable with them and then left everything else
It's
like
usually
there.
what happens.
Yeah.
But like most of what we were doing is like just peeling it back to its core elements.
Yeah.
So it wasn't about creating this opulent space or adding all these high cost materials and doing all these things. It was really like, hey, this building's got, the patio, fantastic, the beer garden actually I should say,
Yeah.
and the big pitched roof, and the area where we'll be able to put our whole brewery, where there was a second floor previously.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of vision, and but again, most of what you see in there that's beautiful and awesome is the core elements of that building, like the structure of that building, the original wood elements that we peeled back what the last 4 tenants had done to
Yeah.
like add.
See, that's the
things on
thing.
top of
Yeah,
that.
they had literally every person before us just added and added and added and added to hide the blemishes, and we were like, no, we can't have that. Like we've got
Right.
to, we've got to pull that all the way back because the whole, the way that, even if it's not the way that other people build space, it's just the way that we like to go to places. Like, hey, you have a sight line to everywhere you want to look in the brewery. You're not confined to a small space.
Yeah.
So we had to open it up as much as possible.
So here's kind of my question about that, and because I think that's exactly what needed to be done. I can tell that that's what you did, and my impression is you'd think it'd be cheaper to do that, but it's not cheaper to do that, and that's why everybody else just patched over the shitty parts, because that's the cheaper way to do
So
it.
here's what we did. It was Paul and myself and our contractor for about 6 months in that building before anybody else touched it. It was just the 3 of us because Paul and I were like, well, I was completely out of a job at that point because I was full in on the brewery, and Paul
Okay.
was about
I was working
50-50
my
on
way
the
out.
yeah. He already told him he's on his way out, but he's still kind of he needed a paycheck, and
Sure.
I was a total bum. So the 3 of us basically almost every day or for about 6 months, we were in there doing all the demo ourselves.
Okay, yeah.
And that's when I fully comprehended how much we had to do on this building.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot. The type of construction in there was basically like this like chicken wire plaster
Yeah.
that was behind all the walls, which sounds like it wouldn't be that bad, but the second you try to take it out with hand tools or power tools, it's not easy. If you don't have like actual like construction machinery that's
Right.
like demoing whole walls, it's a very methodical process.
Right.
And so Paul and I are basically, I feel like we're like halfway to like contractors
So
at this point to be able to kind of take care of some of that stuff.
Well, and so that's my impression. And then again, to sort of paint a picture for our listeners, one of the most impressive things to me is when you walk into the building, on the right side is the brewery, which now extends well into what used to be the second floor. And what that used to be was the bar. That entire space with the brewery was the bar with a low ceiling, and I don't know what upstairs, some shitty offices, some like crack houses. I
That's
think.
exactly what that was.
4 rooms.
All of the
and
above.
We can only speculate on what those.
We've
rooms
been told
were
a lot of
used for.
stories about things that have happened in those offices that they probably can't retell.
Right.
But to make the decision, you know what? We're because the bar is now relocated on the complete other side. It's exactly what had to be done, and I don't even know that I would have had that vision, but it was the right thing to do. Just get rid of this kind of what they made it worked great for a dive bar.
Yeah.
Otherwise useless.
Right.
And now it has tall tanks and the brewery, and it's got everything, and it's so open. The bar's on completely the other side. So I'm just sort of trying to paint this picture of the sheer scope of. I mean, you guys gutted the building.
We did.
Yep.
Yeah.
It probably would have been cheaper to go literally anywhere else in Concord that was available.
Okay, right.
But this building was, you can't, like, it's so hard to find, and this is pre-pandemic when we were looking at like patio spaces. Like, there literally was nowhere else that we could find that would have had the expansive kind of beer garden patio without having to build that out. And everybody we talked to beforehand basically said, if you're going to add outdoor space somewhere, you're going to be in a battle with the city for a long time because 9 out of 10 times that's going to be reducing parking. And the second you reduce parking, the city says, "Nuh-uh, can't reduce parking.
Yeah,
there's
like
too many people here already."
I don't know, like there's such a shortage of parking in Concord, but I get it. And you don't want those battles anyway, and you don't want a long drawn out.
No, but
and that space has everything because it's got all of the beer garden and parking. You didn't have to even use your own parking.
Exactly. We were very, very, very happy that building was on the market at the same time we were looking.
Did you buy it or do you lease it?
We're leasing it.
You're leasing it.
Yeah. Very, very long
We've
term.
got a long-term lease. Yeah. So I mean, at the time, we actually had a very open mind about the type of space that we might be in. You know, a lot of what we were looking at was more industrial, right? You know, the roll-up door and that kind of vibe. And we were looking at, we kind of knew where we wanted to be based on the market of the area and our belief that this corridor of 680 or the East Bay needs some more breweries, and we love it, and we really want to bring what we found as inspiration from other places to our community.
Yeah.
And we really had an open mind. I mean, it would have been like, flip a coin, it lands on the other side. We would have ended up in like a more industrial space if something would have
where they
out.
won't fight with you about parking and things like that.
But this one came up at the right time, and I think when we just realized being in this area that's walkable and close to public transportation and the awesomeness of the plaza here, we're like we think we can make this happen.
We think we can make it happen.
And we have a few people telling us that it probably could work. These are architects and contractors. And so we went in and the whole design of the building didn't really come together until Kevin and I had probably spent a couple months at least in there.
Tearing
and
things up.
It was all just very much like we were learning stuff as we went, and we were working with, on the blueprints and that kind of stuff. And it came together all kind of at the same time.
And I got to give a big shout out to a lot of the people that we worked with too. Like our the first one, biggest one for sure, is our general contractor, like Kenton Rogers, who literally started his own contracting company for this project. For Sidegate. Basically, we kind of helped launch like his new business, which is amazing because we're a new business too. So he was working under the name DeCero Construction when we had him, but I think he's actually changed that to I'm blanking on it right now. It's like something Jigsaw Construction.
Okay, nice.
And he was amazing because he was able to. He basically like taught Paul and I more or less everything we know about construction at this point.
Yeah.
And helped us do. Cause we were like, hey, we don't have a lot of money, but we have time, and we can contribute a lot of labor if it's like unskilled labor. And so we did a lot of that with Kenton, and he was amazing for us.
Nice.
Our architectural firm, Archeologics, actually did Russian River's Windsor building. And we were like, well, if we're going to choose an architect and Russian River use these guys, then we're not even going to look at another one because these guys obviously know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, clearly we're not Russian River, and that's a major project. But it was great to work with those guys too.
100%. And then you have some faith in it.
We have some faith. Like you guys have worked with breweries, you kind of know some of the intricacies of some of those things that have to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was a total team effort to get this building
Love it.
the way it is. Paul and I basically acting a lot of the time as project managers rather than brewery owners, because I mean I feel like for the last like 2.5 years it was Paul and I were like project managers but had nothing to do with brewing. So luckily we were still homebrewing almost every other weekend or weekday on the side, just to make sure like, hey, when we actually open, we should make sure we know how to make good beer.
Not forget that part.
So when we started, it was kind of like, when are we actually going to be able to open this place? And obviously we signed at least 2 weeks before, or a month before the pandemic. So we got our,
Wow.
very quickly. You're like, what did we get ourselves into? So
Yeah.
we just kept at it, And
Well, that was actually part of the
optimistic
reason
and-
too. It was
yeah.
just myself and Paul and our contractor being like, "Hey, if this pandemic is really something that's going to be around for a while, like we can't be around a lot of other people. So the three of us,
Sure.
like, let's just get after it and do whatever we can to demo it. And then when it's time to actually build it back up, that's when we hire everybody else."
Well, and maybe less of a feeling of a rush too.
It actually was kind of
Yeah.
nice. I mean, I feel like that was a little bit of a silver lining. The fact that the construction itself needed to take so long.
Yeah.
And it definitely got extended longer than it would have had we not had a pandemic. But Paul and I, that gave us more time to make decisions that maybe nobody else would notice, but we notice.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there are certain things like all the wood in the building that we took out as part of that subfloor that used to be above that bar area
Yeah.
is now all the tabletops and the bar top.
Nice.
So all that wood got reclaimed, and Paul and I had extra time to be like, okay, well, we're going to take all the nails out of these. We're going to strip these floorboards, and then we'll ship them off to a local mill worker who can turn them into tables, and then that gets shipped off to somebody else in Pleasant Hill who's going to now do the final finish on it. So it gave us more time to spend more time on that kind of stuff.
Right. And it's beautiful stuff, too. Let me pause us on the build out real quick to talk about the beer in our glass, because I still have more questions about the build out, too.
Yeah.
But I've got, we have Simcoe Path IPA, right? Mm-hmm. So tell us
Yep.
about this.
So, as we said earlier, coming from this homebrew background and kind of that perpetual experimentation and playing around with styles a little bit, we thought it would be really cool to just do something really simple, right? And so this is actually a smash beer. It's a single malt, single hop,
Okay.
and something that
Is that what they're called now? Single malt, single hop, or
Yeah,
smash
malt
beer?
because Smash as an
single hop.
acronym is single
Yeah.
malt and single hop.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it
Yep.
actually took me a Google search, I think, to figure that out for
Yeah.
the first time when I heard it.
It sounds cool too. So
It does. I'm so
Yeah.
old now that I
Yeah.
have to catch up on these new acronyms.
Yep.
But for us, trying to hone in on, all right, what's the, we're not tied into our ways, so it's like, hey, what's the best, what are some 2-row malts we can really kind of try that we really want to get a feel for, and obviously hop wise, for Kevin and I, Simcoe is one of our favorites to use. It's just
Definitely.
kind of strikes that awesome balance, and it also just pairs well with so many
It's like
other
a
hops.
old school West
And-
Coast hop that has some new fruitier tropical flavors. So it's like you can get so much out of it.
Yeah, so we really wanted to. We've already highlighted another beer with Simcoe, but this one was just as pure to the elements as possible. And so we just like, hey, let's do this. Let's try one of these 2-row malts we really want to get to know a little bit better. And
What
let's
is the
try
2-row that you use?
Breeze.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's from Breeze. Yeah,
It's so
Yeah.
soft.
It's really nice. Yeah. And we've been. Base malts are not something that a lot of brewers really, really think about too hard other than price. They're like, oh, what's the cheapest base malt? And that's that's what you have to do sometimes because it goes into the vast majority of your beers. But it was fun to do a beer that we didn't. I mean, Breeze isn't very expensive to begin with. It's not like a super high end one, but it's not the cheapest either. But it's one that we had been like, hey, a lot of the beers that we've made with Breeze, whether on purpose or not, came out really good.
Right.
So let's try to make a beer with just this. See what all the our efficiency on the mash. What's the flavor like? Does it actually accentuate the hops? And I think it exceeded on all of those fronts, way more than Paul and I even thought it would.
I was
too.
definitely surprised at this. This is one of my top 3 beers that we have right now, and
It's delicious.
I kind of thought you just kind of, I kind of thought it would just be a little bit, what's the word? You
just
kinda
one note.
Yeah, just kind of monotone, which I think I've found in the past, but the Simcoe plays well, the 2-row malt worked well, and we're actually like, okay, well, this could be the start of a series of beers we do,
Right, and
this is the cool thing about what we're doing is hey, we just tried this as a throw something at the wall, see what sticks, and it's this is a really nice beer.
Yeah.
What hop? Let's do it again.
Yeah.
What hops are we gonna do next time? So
Right.
So
it's cool to kind of evolve from something simple like that.
Kevin, you told me not to do this, but I'm going to do it. You told me not to compare you to Russian River.
Well, because we were drinking Road 2 Hill 56, which is 100% Simcoe Pale Ale. So I'm like,
Right.
all right.
Okay.
Just by happenstance, right?
But I want to make the comparison because one of the things I like about Road 2 Hill 56, so to me, I do think smash beers have gotten better over the years, and they're not so rigid or one
one-dimensional.
note, yeah.
right?
Maybe the,
And I think because hops have gotten better, and clearly, based on this one, I think malt has gotten better. But there's still a bunch of them out there that are either one-dimensional or I find them to be rather sharp around the edges, and in particular with a Simcoe type of beer. But that's something I really like about Row 2. Now, I think, is a little more... He's either a little more aggressive on the Simcoe in the beer that we just drank, the Row 2, or your malt is just a little more rounded. Because what I do like about his is it's not edgy, it's not all pointed, it's still a rounded beer.
Right.
This one is even softer to me and really does showcase Simcoe in a positive light. Because Simcoe, I'm not always a fan.
Yeah.
It's always good with other hops to me, always. But it is not always good on its own. And in this case, it's very good on its own, and I think you guys gave it like this nice, pillowy showcase.
Yeah, I think it impressed me. I mean, Simcoe's been one of my favorite hops for a long time, but that's only because it's always associated with a lot of other hops, too. And
Sure,
it's like so a lot of my favorite IPAs are ones that have Simcoe in it. And I'm like, okay, what's the common denominator here amongst these IPAs? And it's almost always Simcoe in some way, shape, or form.
Sure.
Mosaic's another one that's like that.
Yeah.
And this one we're like, well, what does Simcoe actually taste like when it's by itself?
Yeah.
And I think it's way more expressive than we thought it would be.
It
for
is.
sure.
Well, and longtime listeners will either be making fun of me or just happy to hear that I'm not calling it catty anymore or
Yeah.
all those things. I think Simcoe has changed, or you guys got some good one. Because, it's just a really nice showcase. Listen, I think Vinny would be proud of you.
I hope so.
I think
I hope Vinny someday gets to try this beer, because that would be definitely checking off a box for me.
I genuinely think he would take a sip of this beer and say what I'm saying, in the sense that you really provided a beer to showcase Simcoe in a very positive light. This is delicious, which we also have on tap here at the Hop Grenade, folks. So it'll probably be here all week if you want to come down and try it. And you could try it, I hope you don't mind me saying, side by side with Row 2 Hill 56
Please
from
do.
Russian River.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think you'd have a really nice experience. They're different beers. I do think they present very differently, but they both do, I think, what you guys set out to do. Mm-hmm. How did you choose the you said Breeze, right?
Yeah.
Why did you choose that malt over another two-row?
Well, we had been trying different things in terms of just coming from that mindset of, hey, we're not set in our ways. We haven't been commercial brewers for 20 years, and we just love this two-row malt for everything. And so trying different things, and just we found that when we were using that malt, one, the efficiencies were good, and
that's important.
And
Very
it's
important.
not like we have a whole lab and we're doing all these diagnostics, but we
Sure.
get a few pieces of data, and we're like, this is good, and we just found we were getting kind of exactly what we wanted out of it, and so it was like, hey, this is a good example. Like, we've actually done some stuff with some other malts too, and Pilsner malts, for example, and so it's like, okay, let's do this for a two-row. Let's choose Breeze, and that was the great thing is we don't have to put a lot more thought to it than that.
Yeah.
To be like, hey, this is something we want to try.
Just give it a shot. Yeah.
Let's give it a shot.
How many barrels are you brewing at a time?
We have a 10-barrel brew system.
okay.
Yeah. So we know that we know that we're going to get a quality product. And what we found on the hop side too was just what we've learned, I guess, coming from a home brewing background, is where you get your hops from and the quality of the hops, and not just the variety.
Yeah.
Is so huge.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
just, hey, I got citrus, so it's going to be awesome. It's like, there's so much more to it than that,
Sure.
and we're learning that pretty quickly, and I think a little bit of what getting a good batch of Simcoe in here is a little bit of us kind of finding better ways to get the best quality ingredients into the beers.
What yeast is it? Neutral yeast? You guys
It's
like?
a very neutral yeast. Yeah, it's just a California. It's a
Cal ale.
California ale yeast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's the most neutral we could have picked, probably.
Yeah. Just let the rest do its thing, and then keep it nice and clean.
Right.
Low fermentation temp still. Or?
Actually, no. This one's like right there at 67, 68 degrees.
Okay.
Really, the whole way through. Like we don't for those kind of beers, we don't let them free rise. Like towards the end of fermentation, we just kind of hold it right around that 68 degree temp.
Okay.
Kind of let it do its thing. It's warm enough to do its diacetyl rest in case there's anything that pops up. And then, dry hopped pretty well. It's actually the first. What's weird too is like this was the first IPA we made in our 20 barrel fermenters, but it's a 10 barrel batch.
Okay.
So that was kind of a fun experiment too.
Sure.
There was like a lot of variables on this
We're a little
beer.
nervous about that.
So
Yeah,
you
having
mean-
so much headspace.
That's what I was going to say.
That's a
like
lot
the
of
difference
headspace.
in headspace and how that affects fermentation.
Right. How it affects fermentation, and then really more about how it affects the dry hopping, because you're adding all these dry hops, which is going to add aroma, but you have 10 barrels of headspace that aroma can just kind of hang out in and not be in the beer.
Okay.
I mean, it's all in a vessel and it's all closed, but
Sure. So it's not going anywhere except still potentially out of solution.
right. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like our 10 barrel fermenters might have a foot of space of headspace, maybe 2 feet of headspace, and this has like 10 to 15 feet of headspace.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of funky in our 20 barrel fermenters. They're not normal shaped.
Okay.
They're actually really skinny and really tall. It's the same diameter as a 10 barrel, but almost twice the height, because we have a lot of height, ceiling height in our brewery, but not a lot of like width. And so we had these things specially designed to maximize the height
Sure.
without being too wide, so that we have more room in the future to grow, hopefully, with a few more fermenters.
That makes sense.
So the dimensions on these look like they're 40, 50, 60 barrel fermenters.
Wow.
But they're just really skinny.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds fancy, but it's just 2 10-barrel fermenters stacked on top of each other with the
Okay.
bottom cut out of the
Oh,
second
nice.
one. Yeah.
And they weld it together like that?
No, it's designed normally. It's just,
that way,
Oh,
but,
but you could weld it together like that if you wanted to and make it
tall
the same.
fermenter. Yeah. So we just kind of, again, all these design choices as we're like, man, this building is kind of funky and very interesting and very cool. How can we think ahead to, okay, if we're, where are we going to max out, production wise and barrels wise in this building? And so this is one way to, try to get a little more capacity out of a pretty limited
Right.
space.
We built the brewery for the building, knowing that like, hey, these are our diameter. Like this is the distance we have. This is what has to work.
Yeah.
If it's not this, then we have to figure out something else.
Okay. Well, that's the way to do it, really.
Yeah.
For me, thinking about the space, we've talked about how much kind of outdoor space and parking space you have, but also in your parking lot, I feel like you even have space for fermenters there, like in some sort of future growth too. Like you've got more space inside. I've been there enough to see that. You've got some years to grow. But if you saw a real growth spurt, you could even go the outdoor route.
That would be a fun problem to have. That would be.
Yeah.
Like, all right, give me that problem.
Yeah.
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 But yes, not the craziest idea. I think that is definitely something, because we've got, although that is our food truck spot. So
Sure.
But
We get creative.
Everything can be
it's
fixed.
in
Yeah,
the realm of
Exactly.
And you will-
possibility, for sure.
You will get creative as time goes
Well,
on.
that's the homebrewer mentality, right? Like just do something, like what you have to do, so figure out like the most efficient, or even if it's not the most efficient, just like what is a way I can get to like my end goal by doing it, a certain way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, before I get us to our next break, because I want us to have enough time to talk about cold IPA, I just want to tell you, and it's kind of strange, but my favorite part of the building, I think you already know this because you showed me a picture of it and it blew my mind, and then I've since seen it myself. You guys
Yep.
weren't there the first time I went in. But in the corner where you go up the stairs to the loft, there's this like exposed rock wall. And Kevin, you were like describing this to me that like, we're worried about the structural integrity and different things that we have to mess with, but as we're pulling stuff out, we find these weren't your words, but this ancient rock wall that turns out to be the structural integrity of that side of the building. And from an engineering perspective, like, you lucked out that like all you had to do was make it visible so it looked cool and not really mess with it to hold the building up.
So that's what was cool. So that's like the term cornerstone comes from the fact that in the olden days when people built buildings, they would make a stone wall in the corner of the building.
Okay.
And then build out from there.
I see.
And that's why we think this building is north of 100 years old, because
It has a cornerstone.
it has a cornerstone.
Yes.
Like, I mean, hell, it could be like 300 years old. Like, we don't know.
Right.
But so what was cool about that, like we peeled it back, but luckily my younger brother is a structural engineer, and when he saw that, he was like, this is not gonna fly. Like, you can't have this be an actual structural component of the building, because there were cinder blocks resting on that stone wall.
I see.
What's cool though is that you can build steel beams, and like if you look in that section again, you'll see all this new steel that's up around it, and it frames it, but we didn't have to destroy the wall. It just kind of goes around it to frame it like a picture frame.
Got it.
And then now you could blow out that whole cornerstone wall if you wanted to.
I see.
And the building wouldn't move an inch, because the steel is now the structure.
It's what's holding
so we got to keep the cool feature without replacing it.
But it does just look so cool.
Yeah. Well, and that was something, again, like, as I said, like, so many of these design elements kind of came together as we're in the process of demoing and doing whatnot through this building. When we first got into it, all you could see of this stone wall was about 6 feet by 4 feet, like kind of it was behind the bar as like a little design feature. And it looked like it was just a facade, and someone was into that look. And then as we peeled things back, in fact, the old place had a mini cold room in that whole corner. So we peeled back all these things, and then we realized, wow, this stone wall is not this is not a facade. This is a building.
Right.
And it's about 10x the size of what we thought it would be, or more than anyone even knew it was for God knows how many decades.
But before you guys did the steel, it was still structural?
It was structural.
Okay.
That's so yeah. When
That's the other thing that scares me about
when you were having a
time
great time at timeout, like if there was a major earthquake in Concord, that building was crumbling.
Also, no wonder they didn't, like, we went upstairs, but we weren't allowed upstairs. So,
I mean, it was so far behind. I mean, we had to literally drill holes through that wall, through the stone, to make sure that it wasn't just a facade.
Wow.
I mean, it was yeah, it was a pretty fun surprise.
Yeah, and that upstairs need to be beefed up quite a bit to get up to code, really. So we kind of ended up having to triple reinforce everything.
well, it's a beautiful space, and if you even just do a Google, because I saw them on there today, just do Google Sidegate Brewery, and there's a lot of interior photos that just show up on images. You can go to the website, which is sidegatebrewing.com.
Yep,
that's it.
You can go there, but I encourage you to take a look at it. And if I didn't actually look for old timeout photos, but they're probably there too, because it's night and day, and you should really just see. There's a couple shots looking down from the loft at the brewery. There's definitely shots of this wall I'm talking about. It's right where the stairs go up, so you'll know what I'm talking about. Do a search. It's pretty cool stuff. I'm going to take us to a quick break because we've got one more beer to try, and it's a cold IPA, and I want to talk about that because I've made fun of the style before, but mostly because I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't even know what it is. So hang in there. It's The Session, and we'll be right back.
beer's great for everything that we source, but the hops are the one thing that's just like, let's just go right to the supply.
Welcome back to the program. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks to our sponsors, More Beer, 21st Amendment, Beersmith, Williams Brewing, and all the rest for sticking with us all this time, all these years, and keeping us alive. I'm still here with Sidegate Brewery and Beer Garden. Just opened the third and final beer we have from them. And I just took a little sip of it. It's their cold IPA. And I just want to say, you know, I don't always say it to brewers because I don't think it should have to be said. My assumption is that brewers come on the show, they should always come with their best beers, right? And you guys, you guys chose the beers. I mean, I hope all your beers are this good, but you definitely brought me, all three beers are stellar. I just took a sip of the cold, and it's very good. And I bring this up because not every brewery brings me their best beers. Sometimes I have to make shit up.
Yeah.
But these are delicious. And I've only been to the brewery a couple times. I've had your beers. They've all been good. They've all been solid. These are even better than my experience that I've had there. So,
awesome. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it's fun because we're only like 7-8 months old now at this point, and so we feel like all of our beers are getting better and better and better and better.
As should happen, right? To anybody.
Yeah.
Vinny would tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
Even if a brewery's been around for 10 years, they should be getting better.
Yeah, so I feel like anybody who comes to the brewery now should have a better experience than if they came a month or 2 months or 3 months ago.
Sure.
And we've been proud of everything, but I feel like everything we're coming out with now, it's like we're really learning a lot from every single batch of beer.
Yeah. Well, I've gotten good feedback from others who, even before I went there, too. So you guys have been brewing good beer since the beginning. As you say, you should be proud of what you've done. And we've gotten that feedback here. Okay, well, tell me about this cold IPA. Obviously I make fun of it because I'm like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what is this new fangled style of beer?
Right, well, isn't like is there like one of the big beer companies, like one of their slogans was always like cold filtered.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that was Coors.
And the joke was like, well, no shit. It's because if it was hot, it would just foam everywhere.
Right.
So at first, and I do kind of know the difference now, but I would always make fun of this like cold IPA thing. What is it actually?
I think for us, this is one of those topics that's super super fun to debate with beer people because you can come at it from a lot of different places. But for us, we really loved when we were doing small scale pilot batches and in the garage in the backyard. we really love doing, what we would just call hoppy lagers, or IPLs, right? Was kind of one of those styles that, and just kind of that crispness that you get from, a kind of a high gravity lager and some Pilsner malt, combined with, it's got to be the right combination of hops. I think some maybe don't pair so well, but it was something we really loved doing and thought was a fun, cool hybrid category. And honestly, the segue from brewing that style of beer to what we're calling a cold IPA was really just a little bit of inspiration from Andy, who's our GM over at Sidegate, and he was like, "Hey, what this sounds like a cold IPA? What you guys are brewing,
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, we had never even heard.
To be honest, Paul and I hadn't even heard that term yet. We're just like, we made
a hoppy lager,
right? A hoppy lager, or maybe an IPL. And he's like, no, this is a cold IPA. And we're like, what are you talking about, man?
Sounds so cool.
So I thought I like IPLs too. So, but it's not. What's the difference?
So here's what we've learned since we've made this. So this beer actually is our second cold IPA, which I still wouldn't call if you can call something a traditional cold IPA. Wayfinder Brewing out in Oregon, they're the ones who kind of pioneered the style, and the way that they brew it is using a certain percentage of flaked corn. So maybe like 20 or 30% of the malt bill would be flaked corn, and what that does is it dries it out. Okay. It makes it very, very fermentable, really low body. So it's basically, just a base malt and then some corn, some flaked corn. And then what they do, I don't know exactly their fermentation temperatures, but I think what they do is they use a lager yeast. They start it cold and they let it free rise up to like an ale temperature. Maybe not a full 68 or 70, but somewhere in the mid 60s or low 60s. And so it's kind of that's where the cold IPA kind of style came to be, because it's a lower body, higher temperature lager that's still fermented colder than an ale, but not as cold as a lager.
And sorry, and did you say it is a lager yeast too?
It's always a lager yeast.
Always lager
That's
yeast.
the key. It's
but
always
it
a lager
might not be
yeast.
down at 35°C or whatever.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Correct.
So,
yeah, and the use of the adjuncts and the corn, I think, is kind of one of those things. The idea is to Americanize it, right? This is kind of like a northern North American style. Mm-hmm. So I think that was kind of like, separating it from the kind of the lager, German lager category of things. So all this to say, again, there's people probably have opinions on this, but we're just trying a style of beer that we think is really cool. And what we did recently for this beer doesn't have any adjuncts. Doesn't have any corn in it.
Right.
It's Pilsner and
a little bit a touch of Vienna.
Vienna, yeah.
And I think some Carapils in there to give it some a little bit more body.
And churro also, or Pilsner is the major
Pilsner.
This one's Pilsner.
Yeah, no churro.
This one's Pilsner with Vienna.
Yeah. So what we did really recently, which is really cool, is some friends of ours that we've come to know and have been just awesome and kind of helping us is the guys at Danville Brewing, and Matt and Seabass. We talked to them about kind of the same discussion we're having here, like, oh, what's this cold IPA all about? And they've done a lot of lager, hoppy lager yeast beers, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And they do it a little differently than we do. And so we just brewed a collab with them last week, and it's a little bit of a hybrid between what we've been doing and what they've been doing.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's like a true collab, because it's something that they brought to the table, something we brought to the table.
Okay.
We collabed on all the hops too, and we also brought in Vito DeLucci, who was the brewer at Imperial Beer Project out in Brentwood, who he made just absolutely phenomenal beer.
Yeah, he's great.
He works at More Beer.
Yep.
So it's
he
awesome.
was at my brew day.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, all around, just great stuff.
Yeah.
Vito's gonna get his own brand going forward.
I'm gonna give him his own show, I think.
Yeah. He should have his own show.
Yeah.
So we're really excited about what this beer brings to the table, because it's different than what we've been doing. It's different what they've been doing, and it's just kind of, I don't know, the evolution of using lager yeast to make hoppy, kind of higher gravity beers.
Okay.
I mean, that's
we love it. I mean,
is.
if you think about like how West Coast IPAs have kind of evolved over the last several years, is they're getting drier. They're getting less complicated on the malt bill. There's
Yeah.
less crystal malt going into them, so we're not seeing like, those heavy crystal malt beers. And so they're just getting drier and drier and drier and drier, and they're letting the hops shine, the bitterness shine. And a cold IPA is almost like an extreme version of that, where you're using a lager yeast to accentuate bitterness even more, because lager yeast ferment colder, so you get fewer esters, so there's less to hide behind. And so all you're showing off is the hops.
Right.
So
does it not exactly have to be what would normally be lager malts either, like Pilsner? Could a cold IPA still be a 2-row based IPA?
I mean, I guess it's up to Wayfinder to decide that.
And they've got the street cred to do that.
But I would say that they'd probably be cool with just the essence of it. I mean, it's hard to say like hoppy lager, IPL, cold IPA. Like they're all going after a specific flavor profile, I think.
Right.
And really, it's all about letting those hops shine on a very mellow malt base that's very dry, and you want bitterness. You don't want it to be, like a hazy where it's got
too pillowy.
You don't want pillowy. You want the opposite of pillowy.
This has a nice firm bitterness. That's how I like my IPAs in general.
Well, this one is all. Again, it's not. This doesn't have the flake corn or anything. This was our Pilsner malt with some Vienna. But the fun thing that Paul and I did on this one, and it's actually our World Beer Cup entry this year, is all New Zealand hops. We love brewing with New Zealand hops.
Heck yeah.
But we don't like to overdo it, like to have, half the IPAs on the menu have some New Zealand hops. When we do it, we let's go all New Zealand hops. Like, let's make it taste way different than something that has Citra or Mosaic or Simcoe.
So what hops are in this?
Nelson, Motuer, and Rakau.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So a couple ones that you don't see accentuated too often. I mean, Nelson is the one that you always see.
Always, yeah.
But the Motuer and the
And for
Rakau
good
kind
reason.
of give it like a little bit of interesting character. But the
A little
Nelson
more melon from the Rakau, I think.
Yeah, the Nelson is definitely there though.
I feel like we got a really good batch of hops too on this one. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. So it's got some good, like I said, firm bitterness. You definitely pick up the Nelson, just a little dank from that. And then, there's some melon. There's the Sauvignon Blanc from the Nelson, too.
Yeah.
I just picked that up, too. It's so often now you pick up more of the dank and the diesel and less of the earthy Sauvignon Blanc. But
Right.
this one, you actually get a little more of that.
I think that's
which I
because
like.
it's not just Nelson. It's like you're not going heavy on the Nelson. And I
Okay.
feel like if you go too heavy, you get all the dank. And
Okay.
you don't get that like subtle flavor.
Yeah.
But again, like we haven't brewed with Nelson a whole lot to really know what it is.
Sure.
We just know we like the flavor, and we're
Yeah.
like, let's just keep brewing. Let's keep making a beer with Nelson in it.
Well, and I keep learning it really depends on the batch, too. Like which one you get. Do you dry hop with all the same hops?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
In copious amounts?
A lot. Yeah, this thing is definitely like a 3 pounds, 3 to 3. I mean, we're not going as crazy as some breweries. We like to kind of tone it down a little bit, but this one's like in the 3-ish range, 3 pounds per barrel.
Is there a temperature difference in the dry hop for a cold IPA than there might be a regular IPA?
Well, maybe not on purpose. So on
Okay.
this one, we actually, so again, because this one wasn't fermented the way that maybe Wayfinder might do it, we fermented this thing at like 51, 52 degrees the
Okay.
whole time. And
Yeah.
then towards the end of fermentation, let it free rise up to a diacetyl rest. But it was pretty cold out at the time in our brewery.
yeah, the dead of winter.
Yeah.
Which, believe it or
It is-
not, can be cold in California.
It's
Yeah,
cold
I know, it's
enough.
cold, yeah.
Well, and because we stripped back all those layers of the onion
Right.
of our building,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
no insulation in there. So whatever the temperature is outside, that's what it's going to be inside.
I see.
Pretty much 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So this thing got up to about maybe 60 degrees. So
Okay.
it's actually like
At best,
at best. Like, I mean, it was dry hopped. I mean, the diacetyl rest was at 60, which might not quite be enough, but hopefully there's no diacetyl in there.
I'm not getting. Actually, I was going to let you finish and then ask you about that. If you did
Yeah.
a test for diacetyl.
We didn't do a test just other than taste.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not picking it up at all.
But it's because it's dry hopped so much too. It's like we were a little worried because it's a lager yeast at a cold temperature with a lot of dry hops. So that's
Right.
like a bad recipe for diacetyl.
yeah.
But
So
luckily,
then you dry hopped at 60.
about 60.
You left it there. Okay. Yeah. So not exactly cold,
But
cooler, but
cooler.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're probably getting
We're,
different flavors out of it because of that.
yeah.
Sure.
And for any of these beers, like the lagers that we're doing, we're not going to dry hop much cooler than, or we're not going to dry hop cooler than 60 probably. I think that's just kind of getting that a little bit warmer temperature with the hops on the beer is something that we've been doing pretty consistently.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a delicious beer.
It's
Yeah.
definitely one that we've found that some people like. It's if you like Nelson, you like the beer. If you don't like Nelson, they go
Is
straight
that what
to
it
something
is?
that's more for someone else.
If someone comes in and asks for an IPA and you hand them this, and they're not, they're sometimes a little confused about what you handed them.
Right.
And so it's definitely one that I think is for when you if you can appreciate, if you think and kind of appreciate the different hops and the different styles, the nuances of IPA. That's where it's kind of fun to get into, and that's where, like, with our customers coming in and what we can educate them on a little bit in terms of, hey, there's a lot of different ways to do IPAs, and here's something cool that we like to do with lager yeast, and you can call it what you want. That's where it's really neat to have a beer like this.
Right. I mean, it's actually, we have 2 different cold IPAs right now, and then the third one we talked about, the one we did with Danville and Vito. We just love the style. Like, we think it's such a fun mesh of, like the best parts of a lager with the best parts of an IPA. It's like, yeah, this is for the right kind of person, and anybody who's willing to try it, we're confident that they're going to want to have another one, or at least be interested to try more cold IPAs.
Well, and I do like that there's a distinction, because even us beer nerds can get a little tired of the new style that's kind of the other style and sort of the same style as it used to be, but it's new. It's got a new name.
Right.
Like, and Tasty was a big fan of these like session IPAs for a while. But then, like, JP, my co-host here, would be like, well, you mean a pale ale? Like, what's the difference, right? And so when you get into like these, you get into cold IPA, you're like, all right, well, you mean IPL?
Yeah.
But I understand the distinction, and I like it when brewers actually really understand the distinction, because you're like, well, no, the process that we're doing is very different, and then us beer geeks can shut up because we don't know that the process is different.
We're happy to have the discussion anytime, though, because it's fun. Like, I mean, it's something that again, I think it's just a kind of a cool way to market a hoppy beer with a lager yeast, So,
yeah, absolutely. Well, you guys are brewing fantastic beer. I want to thank you for coming in and sharing it with me and doing the show. I like having breweries on kind of in their early days, and we just had Moxa on last week, and I didn't realize we had them on like right in their first year also, and then had them on 4 years later. So love to have you guys back. I'm going to enjoy being your neighbor and watching you guys grow too. All of these beers are really fantastic. So your homebrewing experience as young lads, has clearly come through. So I wish you luck, and thanks for bringing this beer in for us. Yeah.
Thanks for having us, and obviously everything you do to support the brewing community out here in our our little corner of the world, and the what I like to call the 680 corridor, and it's awesome. If it wasn't for kind of what you guys have established and other people that had a lot of foresight, we probably wouldn't have thought as hard as we did about trying to kind of create build on that.
Well, and it's kind of the more the merrier to me, especially out here. This has been my I wasn't born here, but this is my home, and it has been for a long time. And then, as I've said, I will always keep an eye on you guys, because that home that you have now just has this, and not just because I partied there, it just has this special place in my heart where I grew up where I grew up as a musician, and to see it transformed into something that I would have done too, like really has a little place in my heart. So
yeah, I mean, hey, if you can ever like find some old pictures of Time Out, or you've got some stuff like kind of kicking around like in the attic, like let us know, because we love the history of the building, and we really want to like share that history with people who either used to experience it, because we weren't really we weren't there when it was Time Out.
You probably weren't even old enough.
Well, maybe not, but
they wouldn't let us in though. From
that's
what I've
true.
Heard, no problem having us in there.
Yeah. But anyways, if you find anything, let us know. And again, thank you. Like this is awesome to be on this, and we it's been a bucket list thing for me to be on your podcast, and then have our beer on tap here at Hop Grenade, which is definitely one of the best beer bars in the area. So
Thank you
very
so much. Yeah, we're happy to have it. Folks, if you're in the Concord area, we will have Sidegate on all week. We've got a couple different beers from them. So come on out and try it. We've got the Smash IPA and we've got the Vienna Lager, and you should try both, especially side by side with our other single hop IPA that's on tap right now. So come on out and see us. Go to Sidegate too. They're only a couple blocks away. You can go to sidegatebrewing.com and get all the information that you need to follow them on social media, to get their taproom hours so you can go check it out. You guys do food trucks,
We
right?
do, yep.
Is that just a weekend thing?
Every day except sometimes Mondays, sometimes not. But I would say Tuesday through Sunday, you can always expect a food truck.
Nice. And are you open 7 days?
We are open 7 days.
God, I love you guys. See, Concord needs to grow up again. Let's get past this pandemic bullshit and open 7 days.
Yep.
We did it a while back. I think EJ did it next to us. I'm glad to hear you guys are doing it.
Yeah, we want the plaza to be a
It is part
thing.
of the recovery.
Yes.
We've all got to participate in that.
Yeah, there's great food in the plaza too. So if you don't want what the food truck is, or it's we don't have one for whatever reason, like we're always welcome to bring whatever food you want. Whether
We do the
it's-
same, yeah.
and
Excellent.
kid friendly, dog friendly. So there's no reason not to come to Sidegate.
It's a beautiful beer garden. The weather's getting warmer every day. So, all right, go check them out, sidegatebrewing.com. We'll be back with more shows soon. I'm also going to be broadcasting the World Beer Cup from the Craft Brewers Conference. That's on May 5th. I think. Go to my website, thebrewingnetwork.com. You can find out. You can watch it on YouTube. You can cheer on Sidegate. They've got a beer there, and so do most of the people that you've heard here on the show. All right, folks, take care of yourselves and your beer.